If you are having trouble telling your career story, or better yet, controlling the narrative, then stay tuned because in this episode, I'm going to break down for you the differences between your professional brand and your reputation and why you need to be concerned about both. Let's start the podcast. Hi, I'm John Nerrell, and welcome to the Mid-Career GPS podcast. If you're feeling stuck in your career and overwhelmed by what steps to take, I can help you. As an executive and career transition coach, I help my clients prepare, position, and promote who they are and what they do to show up and find a job they love or love the job they have. It's time to start building your mid-career GPS. So let's get started. Hi, my friends. Welcome back. It's good to spend some time with you today. How are you? Well, at the last week of September, we are in officially fall. We're wrapping up fall baseball, getting ready for the postseason, crossing my fingers the Yankees make the playoffs. We're in the throes of football season, and maybe you are on the pumpkin spiced bandwagon and everything, but this really is an exciting time. In just a few short weeks, if you follow daylight savings time, we're going to get that hour back and it's going to get darker much earlier, and it's definitely the change of seasons. And of course, that rolls right into the holidays. And before you know it, we're going to be ringing in 2022 really soon. Now, for today's podcast, I want to talk with you about your brand and your reputation. And these are two topics that often get confused. And so my hope for us today is to really bring you some clarity around both of these so it will help you move forward as you try to create whatever is next. Now, I like to define brand. And love them or not, Jeff Bezos has this great definition, which is your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. Now, your reputation is how well you deliver on that. And what that means there is that there could be a disconnect between what you believe your brand to be versus what your reputation actually is. For example, you might think you're the kind of professional that is great at communication, but people don't see you that way. You may be the kind of person that says, oh, I have this open door policy. Come talk to me anytime you want. The reality is you're always busy. You never have time for people. So we want to get clear about what your brand is versus your reputation. And we want to look at them in tandem as well. So to get us started, I want you to think about the companies you are brand loyal to. These are those companies where you will always buy their product. You will always go shop at their stores or purchase their clothing. And it might also be the kind of people who you tend to follow on social media. It might be someone of influence, even though you may not like that term, they're prominent enough in the space that there are people who you tend to follow. And those people may not be well known. They may be people within your own professional circle who you love to consume their content, or any chance that they're speaking somewhere, you want to listen to them. So think about those companies and the people to whom you are brand loyal to. And in doing so, I want you to also think about why you are loyal to those brands. There's a reason behind it. You connect with that product or that person or that organization on some particular level. It means something to you. So for example, I am an Apple guy. I own multiple Apple devices. I have the iPhone. I've got the Apple Watch. I am in full when it comes to Apple stuff. It's not that I don't care for PCs. I just know that for my comfort level and what I look at in terms of their productivity suite and the services that they offer, but also just the whole brand thing about the company, I connect more with Apple than I do with, say, a PC brand like an IBM or an Acer. And that's just who I am. It's what I like. Part of it is because in education at the time I was working, we were very, very heavily immersed into Apple products. And I would go to school at work on Apple products and I would come home to a PC and I'd be like, this just doesn't make sense. I just migrated everything over. There's certain fast food restaurants you may like. There's certain supermarket chains you like, clothing brands you like. These are the kind of things that we connect with and they gravitate toward. So how do you get clear on your professional brand? Well, I already shared with you Jeff Bezos's definition, which is your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. I also want to share this definition by Kimberly Schneiderman. Now, Kimberly wrote an article for Randstad titled 5 Steps to Boost Your Personal and Professional Brand. I'll make sure I include that in the show notes. But what Kimberly writes is this, and I quote, "Your brand is what makes you unique. It's what makes you you. It's an authentic representation of who you are as a person and as a professional. It's tied to your identity and encompasses the emotional connection you have with your career path. The better able you are to create a personal and professional brand, the more likely you are to achieve success along the way." Let me go back and read that last sentence again. The better able you are to create a personal and professional brand, the more likely you are to achieve success along the way. So all of you listening have some kind of career goal in mind. It might be your 5-year plan. It might be your 1-year plan. It might even be an immediate goal for the rest of this year. Whatever that goal is, what I take from what Kimberly is saying and what I also believe in my own work is that how clear you are in alignment to that brand is what's going to help propel you to achieving that goal. And when you think about that, when you think about your brand in an alignment to your goal, I want to put a spotlight on this, that there is a difference between the perception and the reality. I often describe this as a differences in truth, and truth with a capital T and truth with a small t. So what I mean by that is the truth with a capital T are the things that we find in evidence and fact, and truth in the small t are things that we ground ourselves in based on perception or speculation or thought that is not grounded in those facts. So to help you get clear on your brand, you have to ask. You have to ask the people who have direct, immediate, and professional experience with you day in and day out to give you the feedback around your brand. And when you do that, this is going to be the hardest part. You have to be prepared to be vulnerable, because you may not get the information back that you had hoped. What I mean by that is you could be putting something out there at work and it may be received very differently. And in doing so, what that means is that what you believe you are giving out at work is not in alignment to how it is received. And when it comes to your professional brand, that is where the disconnect lies. And if you are trying to go for an internal promotion, or you are looking to leverage your talents and expertise and take them elsewhere, You have to be able to get the information around your brand to help you move forward. So oftentimes when I'm talking with people about this, they'll say, well, this sounds very, very much like reputation. Remember that your reputation is how well you're delivering on that brand. It's what people get to experience by working with you. So when the reputation doesn't align with the brand, there's a disconnect there. And it's important if that is happening, you are aware of it. Just as much as it's important if it's in complete and total alignment, you're aware of that as well. So I'm going to give you an example. And when I talk about being vulnerable, this was a moment where I got really, really vulnerable at work and I didn't get the information I thought I was going to get. So I was working in an organization, I was helping to manage staff, and it was really an interesting role in terms of doing training and staffing direction. I loved where I was working. I loved the people I was working with, but I was not moving up. And I started doing some digging around my professional brand and what that looked like. And so I started talking to people who had really good information about my work. And I opened up conversations with them by first and foremost asking for permission. May I have this conversation with you? Or would you be willing to sit down and have a conversation with me about my brand and my reputation here at work? And for the most part, everybody was on board to having that conversation. And I say for the most part because it was a difficult conversation to have. So what I prided myself in, where I aligned my brand to, was that it was very heart-centered. I was very people-centered. I was very much about helping them make sure they were heard, they were listened to, and that as much as possible, I was able to get them the information and the resources they needed to help them do their jobs successfully. And when I started talking to people about that, that always didn't come back. And I remember having a conversation with someone, and again, someone whom I really, really trusted at work. And I said, I don't understand why I'm not getting promoted. Do you have any idea, based on your conversations with, and I named a few people who were in really position to approve those promotions. Do you have any idea as to why I'm not getting promoted? And one of them said to me, well, this person thinks that you're too soft. Too soft? So I took that and I wanted to react right away, and I didn't. And again, this is the part where being vulnerable is key. And so I use this as an opportunity to get really curious. And I said, can you tell me what they mean by that? And what they said was, well, they just think you're too nice. And they think that you don't make decisions quickly and you spend a lot of time working with people where they don't really need all that time. Just a decision needs to be made and you need to move on. Oh, okay. Can you tell me a little bit more? Now, I remember that question because, again, I didn't want to react. I wanted to just get as curious as possible to get more information from this person. And they shared a couple of examples. And at that point, I had to go back and think about those examples that were being referenced and see if I could see things a little differently in terms of their point of view as opposed to mine. And as we were wrapping up the conversation, I said to them, is there anything you think I can do to change that perception if I wanted to? And again, another interesting question here, because yes, we all have the power and the capacity to change. But if I can't change someone's mind, then my efforts are futile. And they kind of leaned on the side of, I don't really think there's much you can do. But what they did say to me was, you need to remember that you're valued. You're just not valued in the same way as everybody else. Okay. And here I was thinking, and I'm also going to say here I was knowing that the way I was showing up to work every day and doing the things that I was doing were the ways that I felt were best. And looking back on it, I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change a thing in that, because the relationships that I built with people on my team, the people I worked with day in, day out, I was and still am really, really proud of. What I came to learn was that in where the business was headed, in where I understood executive leadership decisions were being made, my value was not at the forefront of what I believed they thought they needed. And so with that, I took all that information back and I said, okay, with this person or this group of people, my brand is very different in some ways than what I believe I'm putting out. And if I can't change that knowledge, understanding, or brand in their eyes, because that's what they say about me when I'm not in the room, then I have to decide what is best for me moving forward. And that was a hard day. It was difficult because I wanted certain things to happen in that organization based on my unique professional value and where I felt I could do the best work. And while I was able to do that in some capacity, in the larger picture, that didn't fit. In other words, my brand wasn't necessarily what they wanted or needed at that point in time. And I remember being very grateful for that, being very grateful for knowing this was the situation I was in. And I often look back on it and am very grateful that I wasn't terminated. I mean, I was still doing really great work. I was still making an impact on many levels. But what I knew was that I wasn't going to advance. I just wasn't going to get the promotion. I wasn't going to get the new title. I wasn't going to get the increase in pay. And so I could stay there as long as they didn't find me expendable. So when I made a decision to leave, I left because I had another opportunity to go to, and an opportunity that aligned and fit much better with my professional brand. Because when I made the leap, and I made that leap into my coaching practice to do that full time, it was, here was the message I wanted to be putting out. When people come to me and they're like, hey, I've never really worked with an executive or career transition coach. I've seen a lot of things about you online, or maybe they have talked to someone, because word of mouth is always excellent, and I want to know a little bit more. At that point, they're coming to me because of my brand. Any interactions they have with me, or even if they hire me, now it's going to be more about my reputation. Now it's going to be about their experience and in working with me. I invite you to think about what your brand conversation looks like. And so what questions could you ask about your brand? Well, what I have found to be really helpful in this entire process is to get very curious and ask open-ended questions that will give you the information you not only want, but more importantly, what you need. Avoid questions like, how am I doing? It's too broad and it's too vague and it's not specific enough. You may want to ask a question such as, when you think about my work, what 3 words come to mind? Or what 3 things come to mind? If there was one area you'd like to see me improve upon, what would that be? Or even asking, what do other people say about me and my work? Oh, you want to ask a question? Ask that one. But you have to be prepared for what comes back. When I was teaching middle school mathematics, let me be clear, not every student liked me. It wasn't about being liked. It was about doing a job. But no, not every student liked me. I was not everybody's cup of tea. I get that. I had teachers throughout my career. Some I really loved, some not so much. It's okay. My name is John Nerrell. Not everybody likes me. I laugh at that because it's true. Not everybody likes me. Here's the best part. I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that. Right? I have a very dear friend of mine who, when we might be talking about people or we'll hear about somebody on the news or TV or whatever, and we have this joke, which is, you're a little much. Right. And it comes from the fact that I have actually said that to people, right? I have said that to people in certain times. They're like, you're a little much, right? And we laugh about that because that's what we experience with them, right? So there are people out there who be like, oh, that guy, John Nerrell, he's a little much, right? I'm okay with that because I know I'm not everybody's coach. Hopefully, you're not everybody's manager or everybody's leader or CFO or CEO. You cannot be everything to everyone. It's just physically impossible. As we start wrapping up here, I want you to think about, what does it mean for you to protect and promote your brand? Because after you've gotten all of the information, it's time for you to decide what you want to do with it. Now, I want to look at this as a 2-pronged approach, one internally and one externally. So if you're thinking about navigating toward an internal promotion and you are having conversations about your professional brand at work, those questions around, what do people say about me? What do people get to know me? Or what do they hear about me? You can survey people you directly work with, people on your team, people on your project, and come from a place of genuine curiosity and say, hey, I'm looking for feedback on me, and I'm wondering, what can you share about that? Now, what's really great, and a lot of organizations do this, if you have never had a chance to do this, you may want to consider it, and that is a 360 assessment. What that does is it gives people opportunities to provide specific feedback around the work that you do that is in line with whatever the organization's goals are and how they're going to use it. If you're looking for a resource, I strongly encourage you to check out the Center for Creative Leadership. They have a fantastic 360-degree assessment tool. I've had an opportunity to use it. I've used it with some clients. It's an amazing tool, and it certainly gives you a broad perspective on topics related to your leadership and your leadership dynamic and presence, to really give you that information to put a development plan to help you move forward. Because at the end of the day, what you're looking at is, how is this going to help my development? Now, if you're not thinking of staying at your job and you're looking to leap and jump elsewhere, the branding conversation's going to look slightly different. And the first thing I want to talk about with you is about recommendations. There has been a shift within the last decade that recommendations do not hold the same weight they once had. I mean, let's face it, who's going to recommend you? Someone who's going to say nice things about you and someone who's going to give you a glowing recommendation. You're not necessarily going to get some of the dirty, the unpleasant, like the here's the fault kind of a thing that they need to work on type stuff. Why would they? It's a recommendation. They're usually only going to say good things about you. And if you're thinking about asking someone to give you a recommendation, make sure that they're going to do that. Would you be okay giving me a favorable recommendation? I've had people come and say to me, would you be okay recommending me? And I have told them no. And they have been very appreciative for that fact. So, yes, do you need recommendations and testimonials? Absolutely. But recognize that they don't hold the same weight they once had. And the reason being is that companies have shifted away from them. Many companies have only gone to employment verifications, and that's it. They worked for this company at this point in time. Can you get a character reference? Sure. But if you're looking for a current or former employer to give you a glowing recommendation to another company, be prepared that that may or may not happen. And companies may also have rules in place that say they are not allowed to do it. So you need to be aware of that. What companies have gotten really good at is restructuring their interview process to help them get better information about the candidates they may hire. You may get questions like, why are you leaving your current position? Why were you there for only a short period of time? Those questions, while legal to ask, you also want to make sure that you have the response in a very branded and specific way that is certainly not going to raise a red flag. Now, I am a firm believer that we own where we are. And so saying to somebody, I took time off because my parent was sick, or we were raising our young family and it was a decision that I ended up staying home. Or maybe it has something to do with, look, I worked for a really toxic boss and I couldn't stand it there anymore. And it was stressing me out and I had to leave. The likelihood is you're not going to answer it that way. What you're going to say is something like, I took the job. It wasn't the kind of job I thought it was going to be. It actually ended up not being a great fit. And so therefore I decided to leave. You're not lying. And of course, we never want to say anything bad about a former employer or a former boss, because if you do that in an interview, the likelihood is you're going to do it while you're working there. So we want to make sure that our brand is always above board and is professional and respectful. But if you're looking for that go-to answer, the go-to answer typically is, it just wasn't a great fit. But give them at least something about what that fit wasn't, why that fit wasn't right. And this is where working with a coach can help you show up very authentically and genuinely about answering those kind of questions, because they will work with you on what you feel is best to say and the energy to how to communicate it in a way that is going to feel natural and best. But again, it is all about the brand you are putting out there. Interviews are all about brand. They are all about your professional brand. And if they like that brand and they like what they think you can do, then they're going to hire you. I want to share this one quick little nugget of information before we say see you later for the rest of the week. I actually posted about this in my private Facebook group, Your Mid-Career GPS. If you are not part of it, come on in. I'd love to have you part of the group. So make sure to go to facebook.com/Your Mid-Career GPS, or just search for it and answer the membership questions and come into the group. It's a great community. We have some really great conversations every week. So I'm a huge game show fan. I've been following this whole debacle that's been going on with Jeopardy. And companies and universities will study this and talk about this for decades afterward, how you take something so prolific as Jeopardy and in the scope of a year, just make a show out of it all, right? I'm a huge Mayim Bialik fan. The first episode I saw her host, I fell in love with her as host, and I am so glad she is behind the lectern, moderating and hosting Jeopardy. But in the article I shared, she didn't say anything bad about former executive producer and host Mike Richards. She chose not to get involved in all the drama. And what she said was, "I wish him no ill will." What a great answer. Because that's not her job. Her job is to host Jeopardy. And when all of this went down, and she, at the time, had been the host of primetime and spin-off type series, her response to Sony leadership was, "How can I help?" How many times do I talk about that on this podcast, right? Here's how I can help you. How can I help you? For Mayim to say something like that, as it was reported, is a clear reflection of her brand and how she wants to show up. Now, all she has to do is deliver. That's what happens in the interview process. You communicate your brand, you share your message, you have your platform, you get hired, now you have to deliver on it. So remember, as I like to think about it, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. Your reputation is how well you deliver on it. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to reach out to me. You know how to find me. You can email me at john@johnnerrell.com. You can find me on LinkedIn at John Nerrell, Facebook and Instagram at John Nerrell Coaching. Would love to hear from you. I hope this helps you tell your story a little bit differently and from a greater place of value and service. So until next time, my friends, remember, we build our GPSs 1 mile or 1 step at a time, and how we show up matters. I'll be back with you next week, but until then, make it a great rest of your day. If you enjoyed today's episode and don't want to miss another one, follow on Apple Podcasts or wherever you usually listen, and kindly remember to rate and review. Visit johnnerrell.com to download your free job search tracker and other free mid-career GPS resources right there on my homepage so you can start building your mid-career GPS. Come join my private Facebook group at Your Mid-Career GPS and join an amazing community of people like you who are all working to figure out whatever is next for themselves and their careers. And don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn and follow me on social at John Nerrell Coaching. I'll see you next time.